a self-described car PG, which is a rather pleasing way to sum the game up actually. When you first boot up Gadget Racers, it doesn't immediately scream for your attention. There's no flashy intro sequence or high concept pitch, just a modest little cutscene before you get to the menu. I mean, even in-game, there's this through line of modesty and staying within means that may not convince the player there's anything groundbreaking to be had here. But beneath this unassuming surface lies a game that quietly distinguishes itself, not through spectacle, but through depth. Known in Japan as Choro Q Advance, and in Europe as Penny Racers, this title is part of a long-running series, loosely based on Takara's line of miniature pullback toy cars. Yet the handheld entry here is more than a novelty spin-off. It's arguably one of the most thoughtfully designed racers in the series, and on this system. At first glance, the visuals will immediately conjure up images of the SNES's Mode 7 style track scaling, chunky car sprites, and colourful cartoon-inspired environments. But the technical implementation here is really sharp. The game maintains a consistently smooth frame rate throughout, and even as the screen fills with opponents, hazards, and terrain shifts, performance remains remarkably stable. There's a real clarity to how the game handles movement that just makes it immediately playable, doesn't take anything away from you, even when racing at top speed. In that sense, at second glance, it makes an excellent impression, not because it's flashy, but because it's reliable. Where Gadget Racers really comes into its own is through its emphasis on customization. Every single race earns you money, more depending on how well you do, and that money feeds into a loop of upgrades and experimentation. The number of available parts is substantial, and while the system isn't as granular as something like Gran Turismo, it does tap into the same satisfaction of tuning your vehicle for different race conditions. You'll be swapping out tires for better grip on snow or dirt, equipping a jet ski kit for the water stages, or installing lightweight frames to improve acceleration. The game never explicitly tells you which parts you'll need for which events, but part of the fun is figuring that out through trial and error. It's a racing game with a quiet puzzle at its heart. Each event, be it a standard race, a time attack, a drag sprint, or a combat-fused battle mode, presents slightly different demands to the player. This forces you to not only tinker with your loadout, but also understand how different stats play out in practice. Top speed alone won't win you a twisty mountain course, and having the best tires in the world won't help you if your acceleration is too sluggish out of the corners. For a GBA title, it's surprising how much thought needs to go into every configuration, and with over 100 parts and dozens of body types to collect, the process remains engaging well into the late game. There's a real cosmetic variety to it as well. The different chassis styles range from buses and boxy vans to sleek sports cars and even tanks, most of them inspired by real-world designs, but rendered in a cutesy, super deformed styles. Now, these bodies don't directly affect your performance, they're purely for aesthetic expression, but that's exactly what makes them charming. It's rare to see a game from this era, on this platform, give players so much room to define their own vehicle's identity. Usually it's just, these are the cars, pick one, get on with it. In terms of progression, Gadget Racers follows a mostly linear structure. You move through a series of cups and gradually unlock more difficult tracks and new upgrade parts. There's no real story mode as such, there's no characters to meet, no overarching narrative beyond the racing itself. And yeah, while some may find this minimalist approach lacking in personality, I think it actually works in the game's favor. It keeps everything on focus. The absence of any sort of filler or forced plot lines allows it to commit fully to its core gameplay loop. Still, there are some drawbacks that are worth acknowledging. The game's audio, for instance, is clearly its weakest point. Music tracks are repetitive and fairly basic, with a tone that borders on cheerful but never quite reaches memorable. Sound effects are functional at best, engine noises are varied, and collisions and item usage are all present, but none of them really leave a lasting impression. None of it's irritating, which I suppose is a good thing, but for a game that gets so much else right in terms of polish and pacing, the lack of any audio personality does feel a bit like a missed opportunity. Then there's the difficulty curve, or perhaps the lack thereof. While some later events do test your build quality and racing lines, and some events being simply unwinnable until you upgrade your car, the AI itself never becomes particularly aggressive or even dynamic. Victory, more often than not, comes down to having the right gear installed. It's a systems-driven game, more than a skill-driven one, and yeah, that balance won't appeal to everyone. Players looking for intense racing rivalries or chaotic, unpredictable showdowns may find it a little too calm, too methodical. It's not Mario Kart after all. As the game comes with 3 different names depending on where in the world you buy it, there are a handful of regional differences. Well, differences might be too strong a word actually. Chorokyu Advance, the Japanese version, is virtually identical in content to Gadget Racers, save for the language obviously, there's branding and some minor aesthetic flourishes. One slight difference with the Japanese version is there's a mail system that informs you of specific things throughout the season mode, such as a new race opportunity popping up at a previous track, but this was removed from all the other versions in favor of a more obvious big red exclamation mark. The core gameplay, tracks, parts, and structure of the game are all the same. Looking at how the game was received back in the day, it's clear that Gadget Racers never quite broke into the mainstream. Reviews were kind of scattered, with little fanfare from major outlets, and it wasn't heavily marketed really. But among those who did play it, especially within retro gaming communities nowadays, there's this consistent vibe of surprise and admiration, this kind of, oh, I didn't know this game existed. The retrospective sentiment about Gadget Racers is almost always the same. This game was better than it had any right to be. Quietly smart, addictively replayable, and built with more care than its modest packaging suggests. It understands its limitations and works within them. It doesn't try to emulate console racing experiences or overwhelm players with spectacle like some racers do. Instead, it focuses on getting the basics right, delivering tight controls, a meaningful progression system, and a satisfying loop of improvement. In doing so, it offers an experience that's not just enjoyable, but enduring.